The red warning light flashed across Jack Miller's desk, pulling his attention away from his morning coffee. He glanced at the holographic display, expecting another false alarm from the station's overly sensitive perimeter sensors. Instead, his eyes widened at the readings. Something large had breached the outer fence of Research Station 47, and it was bleeding. "Computer, show me the security feed," Jack said, setting down his cup. The screen flickered to life, showing the snowy landscape outside the research station. Dark drops stained the white ground, leading toward the station's storage units. The computer's neutral voice filled the room. "Warning. DNA analysis indicates presence of Class A predator species. Station protocol requires immediate lockdown and orbital defense activation." Jack leaned closer to the screen, watching as a massive shape limped between the storage containers. Even injured, the creature moved with deadly grace. Its stormy gray scales shifted like living shadows, and its six-limbed form spoke of raw power. But what caught Jack's attention was the way it held its injured leg. Careful, deliberate, showing clear signs of intelligence. "Override lockdown," Jack said, already reaching for his medical kit. "Keep monitoring, but take no defensive action." Warning. Species matches genetic profile of shadowclaw apex predator. Known for destroying 3 colonial outposts. Highly dangerous. Override not recommended. Jack pulled on his cold weather gear, checking the tranquilizer gun at his belt more out of habit than intention to use it. Noted. "But it's injured, and I'm a xenobiologist. This is literally what I'm here for." The computer fell silent, though Jack could have sworn he heard disapproval in that silence. He grabbed his medical scanner and headed for the airlock, his heart pounding with equal parts excitement and fear. In 15 years of studying alien life forms, he'd never encountered a shadowclaw. Most people who didn't live to record the experience. The cold hit him like a wall as he stepped outside. The creature's blood trail was easier to follow now. Dark purple drops on pristine snow. Jack moved carefully, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. He'd worked with dangerous predators before. Quick movements triggered hunting instincts. Slow ones allowed for evaluation. He found the shadowclaw cornered between 2 storage units. It was even more impressive up close. Nearly 4 meters long, with muscled limbs that ended in retractable claws harder than diamond. Its head bore a slight resemblance to Earth's extinct raptors, but the intelligence in those silver eyes was far beyond anything from Earth's prehistoric past. The creature's head snapped toward him, jaws parting to reveal rows of metallic gray teeth, but it didn't attack. Instead, it washed him, its injured leg held carefully off the ground. Purple blood dripped slowly from a deep gash in its thigh. "Hey there," Jack said softly, keeping his voice calm and even. "That looks pretty painful. I can help, if you'll let me." The shadowclaw's head tilted slightly, almost like it was considering his words. Jack knew it couldn't understand English, but tone and body language were often universal. He slowly opened his medical kit, keeping his movements visible and non-threatening. "Computer," he whispered to his communicator, "record everything. This is amazing. It's showing clear signs of evaluating my intentions. This isn't simple predator behavior." The creature watched as Jack removed a medical scanner, its eyes tracking every movement. When Jack took a small step forward, it growled, not aggressively, but almost cautiously. "It's okay," Jack said, taking another slow step. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help." The shadowclaw's eyes narrowed, but it didn't move away. Jack's scanner showed the wound clearly now, a deep cut that would need proper treatment. But the reading showed something else too. "Computer, are you seeing these neural patterns?" Jack whispered excitedly. "They're closer to sapient species than animal patterns. The stories about them destroying colonies, I don't think we were dealing with animals at all." As if responding to his revelation, the shadowclaw slowly shifted its position, turning its injured leg slightly toward Jack. The movement was deliberate, almost like it was accepting his help. "Well," Jack said, carefully kneeling in the snow. I guess this is how first contact really happens. Not with ships and diplomats, but with one person choosing to help. The shadowclaw watched him work, its silver eyes never leaving his face. And in that moment, on a remote research station surrounded by snow and silence, history began to change. All because one human chose trust over fear. 3 days had passed since Jack first treated the shadowclaw's wound. The creature now rested in the station's largest storage unit, which Jack had converted into a makeshift medical bay. He'd spent every spare moment observing his unusual patient, breaking all known protocols about handling dangerous species. "Your wound is healing nicely," Jack said, checking the medical scanner's readings. He'd named the creature Storm, after its stormy gray scales. Storm watched him work, those silver eyes following every movement with clear intelligence. The computer's voice interrupted their morning routine. "Station command transmission incoming. Priority 1. Jack sighed. He'd known this call was coming. "Put them through." The stern face of Director Wells appeared on the nearby screen. "Miller, have you lost your mind? You're harboring a Class A predator inside a research station." "Director, you don't understand," Jack said, standing straighter. "The shadowclaw. Storm. It's not just some animal. Look at these readings." He transmitted the neural scan data he'd collected. "I don't care about your readings," Wells snapped. "That creature has killed hundreds of colonists. I'm ordering you to terminate it immediately." Storm's head lifted at the director's harsh tone. To Jack's surprise, the shadowclaw made a soft clicking sound, almost like it was trying to comfort him. "Sir, with all respect, I won't do that," Jack said firmly. "We're on the edge of something incredible here. Storm has been showing signs of communication attempts. Watch this." Jack turned to Storm and raised his hand, palm out, a gesture they'd practiced. Storm lifted its front leg, matching the pose perfectly. Then, without prompting, it added a new movement, touching its chest with its other front leg. "Did you see that?" Jack said excitedly. "It's not mimicking anymore. It's creating new gestures. This is two-way communication. Miller, this is your final warning." Wells began, but stopped as Storm moved again. The shadowclaw carefully picked up one of the medical tools with its clawed hand and placed it back exactly where it belonged. Then it looked directly at the screen, its silver eyes seeming to stare right through the director. That's tool use," Wells said, his anger fading to confusion. "But the reports said they were just animals." "The reports were wrong," Jack said quietly. "They're intelligent, Director, maybe as intelligent as we are. They just live differently than we do." As if proving his point, Storm made a series of complex gestures, then reached out and gently tapped the screen where Wells' face showed. The meaning was clear. It recognized they were talking about it and wanted to be part of the conversation. "I need more time," Jack said. "Give me 2 weeks. Let me prove what I'm saying. If I'm wrong," he took a deep breath, "if I'm wrong, I'll follow protocol. But I don't think I am." Wells was quiet for a long moment, watching as Storm moved to stand protectively near Jack. "5 days," he said finally. "You have 5 days to show me proof of intelligence. After that, we do this by the book." The screen went dark. Jack leaned against the wall, feeling drained. Storm made a soft trilling sound and nudged his hand gently. "Thanks," Jack said, managing a smile. "I guess we've got our work cut out for us." Storm's response surprised him. The creature walked to the medical supply shelf and began sorting the items by size and color, creating a clear pattern. Then it looked at Jack expectantly. "You've been holding out on me," Jack said, laughing despite his worry. "You understand a lot more than you've been showing, don't you?" Storm's eyes seemed to sparkle with intelligence. It made a gesture Jack hadn't seen before, touching its head, then Jack's, then bringing its claws together in a linking motion. Jack felt a strange tingling in his mind, like the edge of a thought that wasn't his own. His eyes widened as he realized what Storm was trying to do. "Well," he said softly, "I guess we're about to break a few more barriers. Show me what you've got, friend." As the sun set outside the station, Human and Shadowclaw began learning a language that had never existed before, one built on trust, curiosity, and the bridge between two very different minds. Jack sat cross-legged on the floor of the makeshift medical bay, his head swimming with the strangest sensation he'd ever felt. Across from him, Storm sat in a similar position, silver eyes fixed on Jack's face. They had been practicing their mental connection for hours. "This is amazing," Jack whispered as another wave of images flowed into his mind. He saw vast forests under purple skies, great gatherings of shadowclaws moving in perfect harmony, and young ones learning to hunt through complex team movements. The computer chimed softly. "Warning. Unusual brain activity detected in human subject." "I'm fine," Jack said, waving off the concern. "Storm's just showing me their world." "Computer, are you recording all this?" "Affirmative." Neural patterns suggest a form of targeted telepathy, previously unknown capability in shadowclaw species. Storm made a gentle clicking sound that Jack had come to recognize as laughter. More images flowed between them, this time showing why Storm had been near the station. It wasn't just random chance. Storm was on something called the Path of Knowing, a journey young shadowclaws took to prove themselves ready for adulthood. "You're like a teenager on a vision quest," Jack said with wonder. "Your people aren't primitive at all. You just choose to live differently." Storm's next images showed massive ruins hidden in deep forests, the remains of an ancient shadowclaw civilization. They had once built cities and ships, reaching for the stars like humans, but they had seen how technology had divided them, made them forget their connection to each other and their world. They had chosen to step away, to find a different path. "That's why you destroyed those colonies," Jack realized. "They were building on your sacred sites, weren't they? Places where your people gather to share knowledge." Storm's confirmation came with a feeling of sadness. More images showed shadowclaws trying to communicate with the colonists, attempting to explain without words. But fear and misunderstanding had led to violence. "But you're showing me all this," Jack said. "Why me?" The answer came in a flood of impressions. Storm had watched him through the station's fence for days before being injured, had seen him talking to plants, gentle with small creatures, respectful of the world around him. Storm had chosen him. A loud alarm suddenly cut through their connection. The computer's voice was urgent. Multiple vehicles approaching station. Military signatures detected. Jack jumped to his feet. "What? They can't be here yet. Director Wells promised 5 days." Through their mental link, Storm sent calming waves. The Shadowclaw wasn't afraid. Instead, Jack felt a new set of images forming in his mind. A plan. "You want to show them?" Jack asked. "All of them. At once." Storm nodded, moving to the center of the room. The Shadowclaw's scales rippled with patterns Jack had never seen before, and the mental touch grew stronger. "They're here," the computer announced as heavy footsteps echoed through the station. The door burst open. Armed soldiers filled the doorway, weapons raised. Behind them, Director Wells pushed forward, his face red with anger. "Miller, step away from that creature immediately." But Jack stood his ground beside Storm. "Actually, sir, Storm has something to show all of you." Before anyone could react, Storm's mental touch expanded. Jack felt it wash over the room like a wave. Every person there froze as their minds filled with the same images Jack had seen. The rich culture, the conscious choice to live in harmony with nature, the deep wisdom of the Shadowclaw people. The soldiers lowered their weapons slowly, faces filled with wonder. Director Wells stumbled back against the wall, his anger replaced by awe. "Impossible," Wells whispered. "All this time, we never knew. We didn't try to know," Jack said softly. "We just assumed. But Storm's people have been watching us, waiting for someone who would understand. They're not lesser beings because they chose a different path. They might be wiser than all of us. Storm's mental touch carried agreement, and something more, pride. Pride in Jack, in this moment, in the barriers now breaking down between their peoples. The future was changing, one mind at a time, in a small research station at the edge of human space, and it had all started because one human and one shadowclaw had chosen to trust. News travels fast in space. Within a week of the military's encounter at Research Station 47, every major species in the galaxy was talking about the human who befriended a shadowclaw. The station's communication system couldn't keep up with all the incoming messages. Another urgent call from the Galactic Council, the computer announced as Jack checked Storm's now fully healed leg. "Who is it this time?" Jack asked, though he could guess. Every council member wanted to know about the shadowclaws now. "The Mercian ambassador. This is their 5th attempt today." Storm made an amused clicking sound. Through their mental link, Jack felt the shadowclaws' enjoyment of all the chaos they had caused. But there was something else too, a sense of anticipation. "What is it?" Jack asked, turning to his friend. "You've been excited about something all morning." Instead of answering with images, Storm walked to the window and looked out at the snowy landscape. Jack followed his gaze and gasped. There, at the edge of the station's perimeter, stood 3 more shadowclaws. "Computer, don't sound any alarms," Jack said quickly. "They're not a threat." Through their connection, Storm explained. These were members of his pack, drawn by the stories Storm had shared mentally over the past days. They were curious about the human who had changed everything. Director Wells, who had stayed at the station to oversee the situation, rushed into the room. "Miller, are you seeing this? More shadowclaws." "It's okay," Jack said calmly. Storm invited them. "They want to learn about us, just like we want to learn about them." Wells ran his hands through his hair nervously. "The Galactic Council is going crazy over this. Half of them want to send armies to protect us. The other half want to study the shadowclaw's telepathic abilities. Everyone's asking how humans manage to do what no other species could." Storm shared a gentle mental touch with Jack, showing him memories of other species the shadowclaws had watched over the centuries. Most had approached with weapons or tried to capture them. Humans were the first to offer help without asking anything in return. "Maybe that's exactly why it worked," Jack said. "We didn't try to control or study them first. We just helped." The computer interrupted again. Multiple ships entering orbit. Diplomatic vessels from 7 different species. Outside, the 3 new shadowclaws were moving closer, their movements careful and graceful. Storm sent them calming thoughts, sharing memories of his time with Jack. "Director," Jack said, "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." Wells sighed. "At this point, Miller, nothing you suggest could surprise me. Let's invite them all down. The diplomats, the scientists, everyone. But not in the station. Out there in the snow, with the shadowclaws choosing who can approach. Let them set the terms." Through their link, Storm strongly approved. The other shadowclaws raised their heads, sending their own mental agreement. "You want to host first contact negotiations in the snow?" Wells asked incredulously. "The shadowclaws believe in meeting on neutral ground," Jack explained, receiving the concept from Storm. "No walls, no technology between them and the sky. It's their way." Wells looked at the growing number of ships in orbit, then at the magnificent creatures outside. "The galaxy's most feared predators are giving us a chance for peaceful contact, all because you helped an injured one." He shook his head in amazement. "Write up your proposal. I'll send it to the council." Storm moved to the window, touching it gently with one clawed hand. Outside, more shadowclaws were appearing from the trees, not threatening, but curious, ready to try something new. "Look at that," Jack said softly. "A week ago, everyone thought they were just animals. Now they're about to reshape galactic diplomacy." Storm sent him an image of stars, of different species learning to understand each other, of a future where strength didn't have to mean fear. The other shadowclaws added their own thoughts, creating a tapestry of hope and possibility in Jack's mind. As ships began landing in the distance, Jack realized that this was bigger than just him and Storm now. This was the start of something new, a bridge between worlds that began with a simple act of kindness in the snow. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be. The peaceful meeting Jack had planned turned chaotic in minutes. A research ship from the Vex Corporation broke protocol, landing too close to the shadowclaw gathering. Jack watched in horror as armed researchers rushed out, carrying capture nets and stun weapons. "Stop," Jack shouted, running through the snow. "You're going to ruin everything." Storm's mental warning hit him like a wave. The shadowclaws weren't angry. They were afraid. Not for themselves, but for their young ones who had come to see the humans. Through their connection, Jack felt their protective instincts rising. "Computer, broadcast on all frequencies," Jack commanded through his communicator. "All ships maintain distance. The shadowclaws are not hostile, but they will defend their young." But the Vex researchers didn't listen. They launched their capture nets, aiming for the smallest shadowclaw in the group. The nets crackled with electricity, designed to subdue even the strongest creatures. Storm moved like lightning, jumping in front of the young one. The net wrapped around Storm instead, sending painful shocks through the magnificent creature. Jack felt echo of the pain through their mental link. "Shut down the nets," Jack screamed, but the researchers were too excited by their catch. The other shadowclaws tensed, ready to attack. Jack could feel their rage building, their desire to protect their own. This was exactly how the previous conflicts had started. Fear and misunderstanding leading to violence. Director Wells ran out of the station, shouting orders. "Security teams, disarm the Vex researchers. Now." But Jack knew it would be too late. Once a fight started, people would only see the shadowclaws as the dangerous predators everyone feared. All their progress would be lost. Then Jack had an idea. He ran straight to Storm, who was still tangled in the electric net. Without hesitation, Jack grabbed the net with his bare hands. The shock hit him hard, making him cry out in pain. Everyone froze. The Vex researchers stopped their advance. The security teams held their positions. The shadowclaws watched in surprise. Through the pain, Jack spoke clearly. "If you want to hurt them, you'll have to hurt me too." Storm trusted us, protected us, showed us their wisdom. And this is how we repay them. Storm's silver eyes met Jack's. Despite the pain, their mental link held strong. Together, they shared their feelings with everyone present, human and shadowclaw alike. The pain of misunderstanding, the hope for something better, the choice between fear and trust. The young Vex researcher stepped forward slowly and deactivated the net. Jack and Storm collapsed in the snow, both breathing hard. The other shadowclaws moved closer, but not to attack. They formed a circle around Jack and Storm, and then did something unprecedented. They opened their mental link to everyone present. Thoughts and feelings flowed between all of them. The Vex researchers staggered as they felt the shadowclaws' deep wisdom, their love for their young, their hope for peaceful contact. The security teams lowered their weapons as they understood the terrible mistake that had almost happened. "I understand now," the lead Vex researcher said quietly, dropping her capture equipment in the snow. "We wanted to study them so badly, we forgot they could teach us willingly if we just asked." Storm got to his feet, helping Jack up with a gentle nudge. Through their link, Jack felt proud amusement. The shadowclaws had turned a potential disaster into a lesson about trust and understanding. Director Wells walked over, shaking his head in amazement. "Miller, you're either the bravest or the craziest human I've ever met." "Neither," Jack said, leaning against Storm's steady presence. "I just trusted my friend. Sometimes that's all it takes." The young shadowclaw that Storm had protected came forward, touching its head gently to Jack's hand. A new mental link formed, carrying feelings of gratitude and curiosity. As the snow fell softly around them, humans and shadowclaws began to truly talk for the first time, not with words or technology, but with open minds and willing hearts. The crisis had become a chance for something better. And this time, everyone was ready to listen. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like this before. Instead of sitting in the raised seats, the council members stood in a circle on the main floor. In the center, Storm and Jack stood together, surrounded by a mix of humans and shadowclaws. "This is most irregular," the council leader said, looking nervous as a large shadowclaw moved closer to examine his ceremonial robes with curiosity. Jack smiled. "The shadowclaws believe true understanding can't happen from above. We must all stand on the same ground." Through their mental link, Storm began sharing images with everyone present. The shadowclaw's history unfolded in their minds, a story of a species that had reached the stars, then chose to step back. "Impossible," a council member whispered. "They had technology more advanced than ours, and they gave it up." Storm's memories showed the reason. Their people had split into factions, each with their own machines and cities. They had forgotten how to connect, how to share thoughts and feelings. The mental link that made them who they were had started to fade. So they chose to return to nature, Jack explained, feeling Storm's thoughts guide his words. Not because they couldn't build ships and cities, but because they wanted to preserve something more important, their connection to each other and their world. The young shadowclaw that Storm had protected in the snow, now named Swift by Jack, stepped forward. Through the group link, Swift shared memories of learning to hunt, to think, to connect. The shadowclaws taught their young not just survival, but wisdom. "The attacks on our colonies," another council member said. "We thought they were just territorial animals." Storm shared the truth. The colonies had been built on sacred gathering places where shadowclaws came to share knowledge across great distances. They had tried to warn the colonists, to show them why these places mattered. But without understanding the mental link, the colonists had only seen threatening gestures from dangerous creatures. "That's why this is so important," Jack said, gesturing to their circle. "We're not here to negotiate territory or trade deals. We're here to learn from each other. The shadowclaws can teach us about connection, about balance, about choosing wisdom over progress." A scientist in the group spoke up. "But surely they must see that technology could help them. We could offer." Storm interrupted with a gentle mental touch, showing images of shadowclaw young ones playing, learning, growing strong in body and mind. They didn't need machines to be happy or successful. Their strength came from their unity, their connection to life itself. "They're not saying technology is wrong," Jack explained, feeling Storm's agreement. "They're saying there are other paths, different ways to be advanced." The council leader looked thoughtful. "And what do they want from us?" The answer came from all the shadowclaws at once, a chorus of mental images showing different species learning together. They wanted understanding, respect for their chosen way of life, and a chance to share their wisdom with those willing to learn. "They're offering us something incredible," Jack said. "Not their old technology or their hunting skills, but their understanding of what really matters: connection, balance, and growth." Storm moved to the center of the circle, scales shimmering in the light. One by one, he touched his head to each council member, sharing a direct mental connection. Jack felt their surprise and wonder through the group link. The council leader straightened, his face filled with awe. "I understand now. We've been thinking about this all wrong. These aren't diplomatic negotiations. This is a chance to learn from teachers we never knew we had." Swift brushed against Jack's leg, sharing feelings of pride and hope. The young shadowclaw had seen firsthand how humans could bridge the gap between worlds. As the council members began talking excitedly among themselves, Jack felt Storm's satisfaction. This was what his friend had hoped for from the beginning. Not just peace, but true understanding. The galaxy was about to change, not through technology or force, but through the simple power of minds touching minds, hearts understanding hearts. And it had all started with a human who chose to help instead of fear. 1 year later, Jack stood on a hilltop overlooking the new Shadowclaw Cultural Center. The building was unlike anything humans usually made, open to the sky, with living trees growing through its spaces, and areas where technology was completely absent. It was a bridge between two ways of life, just like Jack himself had become. Storm walked up beside him, larger and even more magnificent than when they'd first met. As the first official ambassador of the Shadowclaw people, Storm had helped design this place where different species could learn from each other. Hard to believe it all started with a cut leg in the snow, Jack said, feeling Storm's amusement through their mental link. Below them, a group of young aliens from various species sat in a circle with Swift and other young Shadowclaws. They were learning the basics of mental linking, the first step in understanding the Shadowclaw way of life. Ambassador Miller, the computer voice came through his communicator. The Council's annual report is ready. Jack smiled. The report would show amazing progress. In just 1 year, 5 new cultural centers had opened across the galaxy. Each one was a place where people could choose to step away from their technology and learn what the Shadowclaws had to teach. Storm shared an image of their first meeting, when Jack had ignored all protocols to help an injured monster. The memory carried feelings of gratitude and pride. "You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you?" Jack asked his friend. "Even back then, you were testing to see if humans could understand." Storm's mental touch carried playful agreement. The Shadowclaws had watched humans for years, seeing how they tried to connect with other species, how they helped without always asking for something in return. Jack hadn't been chosen by accident. A small group of human children ran past them, chasing a young Shadowclaw in what looked like a game of tag. None of them showed any fear. To them, Shadowclaws were just friends who thought in different ways. "Ambassador," the computer called again. "The new learning group is ready for their first session." Jack nodded. "Tell them we'll be right there." This group would be special. Diplomats and scientists who had once tried to capture or study Shadowclaws were now coming to learn from them instead. Real change was happening, one mind at a time. Storm suddenly sent him a new image, a vision of the future. Jack saw humans and Shadowclaws working together to help other species find balance between progress and wisdom. He saw cultural centers becoming places of healing, where people tired of endless technology could remember how to connect with life itself. "We've come so far," Jack said softly. "But you're saying we're just getting started, aren't we?" Swift appeared on the hilltop, now fully grown and responsible for teaching the youngest visitors. The once shy Shadowclaw had become a symbol of the new generation, born into a world where different species could understand each other. Through their link, Storm shared something else. A choice. The Shadowclaws were offering humans a chance to learn their deepest secrets, the mental techniques they had developed over thousands of years. Not to use as weapons or tools, but to grow in ways technology could never provide. That's what this place is really about, isn't it? Jack realized. Not just peace between species, but a new path forward. A way to have progress without losing connection. Storm's answer was simple, a feeling of standing together, different but united, each making the other stronger. A cold wind blew across the hilltop, reminding Jack of that first snowy day at Research Station 47. He had just wanted to help an injured creature. Instead, he had helped change the galaxy. "Ready for today's lesson?" he asked his friend. Storm stood tall, silver eyes shining with wisdom and joy. Together, they walked down toward the cultural center, where beings from across the galaxy waited to learn that the fiercest predators had become the greatest teachers. And somewhere in space, a small research station still stood in the snow, its fence now gone. Its doors open to all who chose to learn that understanding was the greatest power of all. The end.